The girl sat trembling in the cold metal cell, her small hands pressed tightly against the wall. Her legs, weak and unable to hold her weight properly, shook under her. Around her, the alien arena buzzed with strange sounds, like deep hums and distant roars, and flickering lights danced across the walls. She had been captured days ago, taken far from Earth, and now faced a situation she could barely understand. The aliens didn't speak in a language she could follow, but she could feel their cruel excitement. She had heard the whispers among the guards. They said she was going to face the deadliest dragon the galaxy had ever seen. It was a creature so terrifying that even the strongest aliens avoided it. And now they were throwing her to it. At only 13, crippled and small, she felt the fear curling in her chest like fire. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to summon some courage. She knew fear alone would not save her. The walls of the arena opened with a hiss, and a bright, harsh light filled her cell. Through the opening, she caught the first glimpse of the dragon. Its scales shimmered in colors she had never seen, like liquid metal, and its eyes glowed with a fiery intelligence that made her stomach twist. She could hear the beat of its wings even from inside the cell. It was enormous, far bigger than any dragon she had seen in books or heard about in stories. The aliens laughed as they pushed her toward the opening. They spoke in a strange, harsh tone, pointing at her and at the dragon as if she were nothing more than a toy. She stumbled forward, her legs failing her, and she felt a sharp pang of despair. Her mind raced. She had no weapons, no armor, and no allies. All she had was herself, her small body, her mind, and the courage she could gather from somewhere deep inside Dot as she stepped into the open arena. She could feel the heat from the dragon's breath. The air was thick and heavy, almost as if the dragon's presence pressed against her chest. But even as her knees buckled, she didn't scream. She refused to give them the satisfaction. Her eyes met the dragon's, and for a moment, something strange happened. The dragon didn't attack. It tilted its massive head, regarding her with curious, almost intelligent eyes. The aliens hissed in frustration. They had expected her to panic, to beg, to scream. They had expected her to be eaten without a fight. But the girl, small and weak though she was, stood frozen yet steady. She looked up at the dragon and whispered to herself, though she wasn't sure it could understand, "I'm not afraid. Not if I can help it." The dragon's wings unfurled slowly, and its claws scraped against the ground, sending small rocks skittering away. It was ready to strike, yet it didn't. The girl realized, in that moment, that the dragon wasn't just a mindless beast. It seemed to be observing her, almost testing her. She swallowed hard and forced herself to take a step forward. Her legs shook violently, but she kept moving. She looked around, trying to find anything she could use, any tiny advantage. There was nothing. No weapons, no cover, not even a stick or rock. All she had was her courage and her mind. The alien spectators cheered, their voices booming across the arena, but the girl blocked them out. She focused entirely on the dragon, the only living creature in the arena she might still have a chance to reach. The dragon let out a low growl, a sound that vibrated through her chest. It took a step closer, and she felt the heat of its body. Her heart pounded. She tried to stay calm, breathing slowly, telling herself that fear could be a weapon if used wisely. She lowered herself slightly, showing that she wasn't trying to attack. Maybe, just maybe, the dragon could understand that she wasn't a threat. The alien guards shouted, banging on the metal railings and waving their strange weapons. They wanted action. They wanted blood. But the girl stood her ground. She kept her eyes on the dragon, keeping her movements small and careful. She knew one wrong motion could end everything. Then, something miraculous happened. The dragon hesitated. Its massive head dipped lower, and it sniffed the air around her. Its tail swished slowly behind it, as if it were calculating something. The girl noticed a flicker in the dragon's eyes, a moment of recognition that she didn't understand. It wasn't attacking, not yet. It was watching her. The girl's mind raced with ideas. Maybe she could survive if she stayed calm, if she didn't show fear, if she could somehow reach the dragon's mind instead of its body. Every story she had ever read about dragons and beasts flashed through her memory. They said dragons could sense courage. Could it be true? Could this monster, the deadliest creature in the galaxy, respect courage, even in a tiny human girl? The alien spectators roared in anger, banging on the railings, demanding that the dragon attack. The girl felt the pressure of all those eyes on her, the expectation of failure pressing down like a weight. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a slow, steadying breath. Then she opened them and stepped forward again, just a little. Her legs screamed, her body shook, but her resolve hardened. She whispered softly, her voice barely carrying over the roar of the crowd. "I won't give up. I can do this." The dragon paused. Its eyes seemed to flicker with something that looked almost like curiosity. The girl realized she had a chance, a very slim one, but a chance nonetheless. She took another small step, careful, steady, showing no sign of weakness, no sign of fear. The arena seemed to hold its breath. The aliens were growing frantic. The spectators were shouting, some cheering, some hissing in frustration. But the girl didn't hear them anymore. All she could feel was the dragon, massive and dangerous, and the strange connection that had formed in that briefest moment. For the first time since she had been captured, a spark of hope lit inside her. Maybe she could survive this. Maybe she could turn the tables, even against the deadliest creature in the galaxy. The dragon let out a low, rumbling sound, not quite a roar, not quite a growl. The girl felt it through her chest. She didn't move, didn't flinch, and didn't look away. For the first time, she felt that she was not completely powerless, and in that moment, she realized that this fight was not only about survival. It was about courage, about spirit, about refusing to be broken. No matter how cruel the world or aliens might be. The dragon stepped closer, its massive claws scratching the stone ground, sending small sparks into the air. The girl stayed still. She didn't smile, she didn't cry, she just stood there. And slowly, impossibly, she began to feel that maybe, just maybe, she could make it through. The alien shouted again, demanding action, but the girl didn't move. She and the dragon were locked in a silent contest of wills. And for the first time, she understood that survival might not just depend on her legs or her strength, but on something far deeper, something that even the deadliest dragon might recognize: her courage. The girl's heart pounded as she watched the dragon, massive and alive with power. Its wings stretched wide, creating shadows that darkened the arena floor. Every beat of its wings sent a gust of hot, heavy air that made her hair and clothes whip around. She had never been this close to anything so enormous, so terrifying, yet she forced herself to remain calm. Her body trembled, her legs ached, but her mind refused to give in to panic. The dragon took a step forward, and the ground shook beneath its claws. It let out a deep, rumbling growl that echoed off the alien walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. She expected the roar to signal the end, to be the moment it lunged at her and crushed her. But it didn't attack. Instead, it sniffed the air, tilting its massive head as if trying to understand this small, strange creature that had entered its territory. She noticed the dragon's eyes intelligent, bright, and alert. They were not just eyes of a predator hunting its prey. They seemed to be studying her, almost questioning her. The girl's mind raced. Could it sense her fear? Or her courage? She took a slow, deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She forced herself to move, tiny steps forward, showing that she was alive, aware, but not threatening. The alien spectators shouted and waved their strange weapons. They wanted blood. They had expected her to scream, to cry, to collapse, and the dragon to tear her apart without hesitation. But she stayed upright, small and fragile as she was, refusing to give him that satisfaction. The dragon's tail swished slowly behind it, brushing against the rocks and scraping sparks off the metal floor. Each movement seemed deliberate, careful, calculated. It was not mindless. It was watching her, learning her patterns, judging her. She felt a surge of fear, but also something else, a strange, tentative hope. Maybe the dragon could be reasoned with. Maybe it could sense that she was different from the others it had faced, that she was not just another weak victim. She held her hands close to her chest, speaking softly, though she wasn't sure it could understand. "I'm not going to fight you. Not unless I have to." The dragon let out a low, vibrating sound that made her teeth rattle. It inched closer, and the air grew hotter, almost suffocating. Her legs shook as she tried to hold her ground. She felt small, weaker than ever, but she refused to back down. The dragon was testing her, and if she could show courage, maybe she could survive. Her eyes scanned the arena. There was nothing, no weapons, no objects, nothing that could help her defend herself. She had only her mind, her instincts, and her courage. Slowly she crouched, keeping her movements deliberate but calm. She could feel the dragon's gaze on her, heavy and calculating. It sniffed the air again, and for a moment it seemed to pause, considering her. The girl realized she needed to understand this creature. It wasn't just a monster. It was alive, intelligent, and dangerous. She needed to read its movements, its reactions, its intentions. She remembered stories she had read about dragons long ago, how they could sense truth, fear, and courage. Could it be true? Could a creature so terrifying recognize bravery in a weak, crippled human girl? The dragon's wings flared, casting shadows that stretched across the arena. She could feel the vibrations through her chest. The alien spectators grew restless, banging on their railings and screaming at the dragon to attack. But the dragon ignored them. It had its own judgment, its own instincts, and it seemed, somehow, to be focused entirely on her. The girl's mind raced with thoughts of survival. She could not outrun it, could not fight it, could not hide. But maybe she didn't have to. Maybe survival meant something else: patience, understanding, courage, and a connection that went beyond fear. She swallowed hard, standing taller, forcing herself to move a step closer. Her legs screamed, her body begged her to collapse, but she ignored it. She whispered again, her voice barely carrying over the roar of the alien spectators. "I won't hurt you, and I hope you won't hurt me." The dragon's head tilted, its eyes glimmering with a strange light. It took a step closer, sniffing her again. She could feel the heat radiating from its body, could hear the rasp of its breath. But still, it did not attack. It seemed curious, intelligent, aware. It was as if it could sense something in her, something that the aliens could not understand. The girl's mind focused on one thought: she had to survive. Not just for herself, but to prove that courage mattered, that even the smallest, weakest person could face the deadliest creature in the galaxy. Her hands trembled, but she extended one slowly, palm facing the dragon, a gesture of trust. It did not move to strike. It paused, its massive head lowering slowly, its eyes never leaving hers. The alien spectators were screaming now, frustrated, angry, and confused. Their plan was failing. They had thought this would be an easy display of power, a spectacle of death. But the girl, small and crippled as she was holding her ground. She was facing the deadliest dragon alive, and incredibly, it was not attacking. She realized she had a chance. Not a guaranteed chance, not a safe chance, but a chance nonetheless. She could survive if she stayed calm, stayed steady, and kept showing courage. Every step, every movement mattered. She felt sweat trickling down her face, her heart hammering in her chest. But she forced herself to stay still, to breathe slowly, to focus. The dragon let out a sound, neither roar nor growl, but a deep, vibrating tone that she could feel in her bones. It moved closer, circling her slowly, its massive claws scratching the floor, sending sparks flying. She didn't flinch, didn't step back, and didn't scream. She met its gaze steadily, showing no fear, showing only the smallest sign of bravery she could muster. And then, in a moment that felt like eternity, the dragon paused. Its massive head lowered even further, its eyes glimmering with something she couldn't name. Recognition? Curiosity? Something like respect? She did not know. But she knew that for now, the deadliest creature in the galaxy had chosen to observe rather than attack. The girl felt a spark of hope, light inside her chest. Maybe she could survive this. Maybe she could turn what seemed impossible into something she could control. Her mind raced with possibilities, small strategies, and tiny gestures that could keep her alive. She had no strength, no weapon, no protection, only courage and intelligence. And incredibly, that might be enough. The alien spectators continued their shouting and banging, but the girl no longer noticed them. Her focus was entirely on the dragon. She realized something important. This fight was not just about strength or fear. It was about spirit. It was about showing that even the smallest, weakest person could have a will strong enough to make a creature reconsider, strong enough to survive the impossible. The dragon's wings flared again, shadows dancing across the arena. Its tail swished lazily, yet the girl could sense its power, its readiness. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. Every movement mattered. Every breath mattered. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. She would not give up. And in that moment, the girl understood something she had never known before. Survival was not just about running, hiding, or fighting. It was about courage, spirit, and connection. And perhaps, just perhaps, even the deadliest creature in the galaxy could recognize those things. For the first time since she had been thrown into the arena, she felt a small, fragile hope. She was alive. She had survived the first moments. And now she had to find a way to survive the next. The girl's legs were stiff, and her body ached from the strain of standing so long, yet she refused to sit or stumble. The dragon remained in front of her, enormous and watchful, its glowing eyes never leaving her. Something had changed. The terror she had felt when she first saw it was now mixed with curiosity. She began to notice small details, the way its wings flexed with controlled power, the subtle movements of its tail, and the way its eyes seemed almost thoughtful, as though it was trying to understand her. She took a slow, careful step forward, testing the dragon's reaction. It remained still, its body tensed but not aggressive. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm, breathing steadily. The arena seemed to shrink around her. The alien spectators became a distant hum in her mind, no longer terrifying. All that mattered was the dragon and her connection to it. The girl remembered something her mother had once said about facing fear. Sometimes it was about presence, about showing courage through stillness rather than struggle. She raised her hands slightly, palms facing the dragon in a gesture of openness. She whispered softly, "I don't want to hurt you, and I hope you don't want to hurt me." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the dragon tilted its massive head and let out a low, vibrating sound that she could feel in her chest. It was not a roar. It was not a growl. It was a sound that seemed like thought itself, like it was responding, listening, acknowledging her words. The girl's eyes widened. Perhaps it was trying to understand her, not just as prey, but as something else. Something alive and aware, like itself, encouraged by the reaction. She took another step, slower this time, careful not to make sudden movements. She could feel the heat of its body now, and the vibrations of its wings brushed against the arena floor. The dragon's claws dug into the stone, sending sparks scattering across the ground. She froze for a moment, holding her breath, expecting it to strike. But it didn't. It merely watched, as if waiting. The girl realized that she could not survive by fear alone. She had to do something, even the smallest action, to show that she was not helpless. Slowly she crouched, lowering her body closer to the ground. It was a gesture of respect, but also a test. Could she approach it safely? Could she show that she trusted it enough not to run, not to fight? She reached out one trembling hand, palm up, not expecting it to understand, but hoping. The dragon's massive head lowered further, and for a heartbeat, it seemed almost gentle. Its glowing eyes studied her, focusing on her hand. The girl held her breath, every nerve in her body on edge. The alien crowd roared, frustrated and demanding action. But the dragon ignored them. It was entirely focused on her dot. She inched forward, little by little, careful not to provoke any sudden reaction. With every step, she felt her courage grow. This was not just survival. It was understanding, a silent communication across species and worlds. For the first time, she felt less like prey and more like a being with a chance, a being capable of connection and intelligence. The dragon tilted its head again, examining her movements. Its eyes glimmered with something she couldn't name: curiosity, recognition, maybe even something like respect. The girl's heart beat so fast she thought it might burst. She whispered again, "I'm not afraid. I can be brave if I have to." She noticed that the dragon's wings flexed, creating a shadow over her, almost protective rather than threatening. It circled her slowly, testing her reactions. She did not move abruptly. She did not flinch. She let the dragon move around her, observing, learning, responding. And the more she stayed calm, the more she realized she was not just surviving. She was understanding God suddenly. The dragon lowered its massive snout closer to her hand, sniffing her carefully. She froze, barely daring to breathe. Sparks of heat brushed against her fingers, but she did not pull away. The dragon's eyes seemed to search her mind, its presence pressing heavily against her chest, but she remained still, quiet, trusting her instincts. The alien spectators were growing impatient. They shouted, waved their weapons, and banged on the railings. They could not comprehend what was happening. They expected a bloodbath, but this small human girl was holding her ground against the galaxy's deadliest creature. Their anger and confusion only made the girl more determined. She focused entirely on the dragon dot. Another low sound vibrated from its chest, this time closer to a rumble, but gentler. It moved its massive body slightly closer to her, careful, deliberate. The girl realized that she was no longer just facing a predator. She was communicating with it, understanding it in a way the aliens could never hope to. Her mind raced with ideas. Could she somehow reach it further? Could she show that she was not just courageous, but clever, aware, and capable of understanding its nature? She raised her free hand slightly, waving it gently, a small motion meant to show friendliness. The dragon did not flinch. Instead, it lowered its head, its eyes never leaving hers. A spark of hope ignited in her chest. Maybe survival was possible. Maybe, through courage, patience, and a willingness to connect, she could turn what seemed like certain death into something different, something unimaginable. She felt a strange sense of calm in the presence of this massive, terrifying creature, She took another careful step forward, close enough to feel the heat radiating from its body, but not so close as to seem threatening. The dragon's tail swept the ground behind it, and the vibrations from its claws made the stones under her feet tremble. She held her ground, steadying her breath, steadying her heart. The girl realized that the dragon's behavior was not random. It was testing her, learning her patterns, understanding her courage. And in that realization, she felt a surge of strength. She might be small, crippled, and powerless by human standards. But she had something far greater in this moment: presence, awareness, and the courage to face the impossible. She whispered softly again, barely audible over the rumble of the dragon and the angry shouts of the spectators. "I won't hurt you. I just want to survive." The dragon paused, its massive head only inches from her. Its eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and then, incredibly, it lowered its head further, almost in acceptance. The girl's small hand reached out again, this time closer to touching the dragon's snout. Sparks of heat brushed her fingers, but she did not flinch. For the first time, the girl felt a true connection. She was no longer just a victim, thrown to the deadliest dragon in the galaxy. She was an equal in this silent, wordless understanding. She could feel its power, its intelligence, its presence. But she also felt her own courage and awareness reflected back at her. The alien spectators were shouting and gesturing frantically, but the girl ignored them. She focused entirely on the dragon, this massive, terrifying, and yet strangely gentle creature. It was a moment of understanding, a silent acknowledgement that courage, even in a small, weak human, could matter. The girl realized that this was only the beginning. She had survived the first encounter. She had faced the dragon, and through courage and patience made a connection. She had no idea what would come next, but she knew one thing: she was not powerless. She had hope. She had spirit. And with those, maybe she could face anything. The dragon lowered its massive wings slightly, circling her with deliberate care. She stayed calm, allowing it to move as it wished, observing, understanding. Every nerve in her body was alert, yet her mind felt clearer than ever. Survival was no longer just about fear. It was about understanding, connection, and courage. And in that moment, standing before the deadliest dragon in the galaxy, the girl understood that even the smallest, weakest human could make a difference, could survive, and could turn fear into something extraordinary. The arena had grown silent in a strange way. The alien spectators were no longer the focus. All that mattered was the girl and the dragon. Her body ached from hours of standing, and her legs trembled as if they might give out at any moment, but her mind was sharper than ever. She had survived the first encounter, learned to stay calm, and made a connection that seemed impossible. Yet she knew the challenge was far from over. The dragon moved slowly around her, wings flexing like powerful sails, its tail sweeping the ground in deliberate, careful arcs. Every step shook the arena floor slightly, and yet she did not flinch. She had learned that showing fear could be deadly, but calmness, patience, and observation could turn the tables. Her eyes studied the dragon just as carefully as it studied her. She noticed the small movements, the twitch of its ears, the flick of its tail, the rise and fall of its chest, and she realized that understanding these patterns might give her a chance to survive what came next. The alien spectators shouted again, banging their weapons against the rails, demanding action. They could not understand why the dragon did not attack, why this tiny human girl still lived. But she ignored them. Their anger and confusion no longer mattered. All that mattered was her survival and the bond she was slowly forming with this terrifying creature. She crouched slightly, lowering herself closer to the ground, and whispered softly, almost to herself, "I won't hurt you if you don't hurt me." Her voice was barely audible, over the low rumble of the dragon, but it was enough. She could feel the vibrations in the ground from its heartbeat, and for a moment it almost seemed to pause, as though it had understood her words. The dragon stepped closer, and she could feel the heat of its body radiating toward her. She did not move away. She kept her small hands visible, careful not to make sudden movements. Her mind raced, thinking of everything she could do to survive. She had no weapons, no backup, no chance of escape without the dragon. But maybe, just maybe, she could use her courage, her intelligence, and this fragile connection to stay alive. The dragon let out a low, vibrating growl, not aggressive, but curious. Its massive head tilted slightly, and it circled her slowly, as if evaluating her intentions. She noticed that it seemed to pause when she held her ground, when she stayed calm, and when she moved slowly and deliberately. She began to understand that this was a test, not a hunt. The dragon was measuring her courage, her intelligence, and her ability to remain composed. A spark of hope grew in her chest. Perhaps this creature, feared across the galaxy, could be reasoned with, or at least respected. She took a slow step forward, careful to maintain her calm, careful to show no sign of fear or weakness. The dragon's eyes followed her every move, glowing brighter in the dim light of the arena. She felt the ground shake with each step of its massive feet, but she did not stop. Her mind raced with ideas. If she could continue to gain its trust, could she perhaps guide it, control it, or even ride it? She had read stories of humans forming bonds with dangerous creatures, of courage and understanding, creating unlikely alliances. Maybe this was her chance. She held out one hand slowly, palm up, a gesture of peace and trust. The dragon lowered its head slightly, sniffing the air around her hand. Sparks of heat brushed against her fingers, but she did not pull away. Her heart pounded, her legs shook, and sweat ran down her face, but she remained still. She whispered again, "I just want to survive." "Please." The dragon's massive eyes seemed to soften, and it made a sound that vibrated through her chest. It moved closer, circling her slowly, but did not strike. She realized that she had something they had not expected: her courage, her calm, and her willingness to connect. The dragon was intelligent, capable of understanding more than the aliens imagined. It could sense that she was not just prey. Suddenly, one of the aliens shouted, waving a weapon at the dragon. The creature flared its wings in response, a low, threatening rumble filling the arena. The girl froze, not moving a muscle. She knew that if she panicked, if she ran, it could trigger an attack. Instead, she held her position, meeting the dragon's gaze steadily, showing no fear, only courage. The dragon's wings relaxed slowly, and it turned its massive head back to her. A moment felt fragile, tense, like walking on a thin thread above a deep chasm. She took another careful step, closer this time, showing patience and control. The dragon studied her, circling gently, testing her movements, gauging her intentions. A realization struck her. Survival was not just about standing still or being quiet. It was about understanding the dragon, about predicting its behavior, about forming a connection. Her body may have been weak, but her mind could be sharp. Her courage could be stronger than the claws of the deadliest creature in the galaxy. The dragon let out another low rumble, and this time it seemed less like a warning and more like acknowledgement. She could feel the vibrations through her body, could hear the faint echo of its thoughts, though not in words. She did not flinch. She remained calm, holding her hands open, showing trust. The alien spectators shouted and gestured frantically, but she blocked them out. This was no longer about them. It was about her and the dragon, a silent understanding forming in the space between them. She felt a strange sense of calm, mixed with tension, and realized that the dragon's intelligence was real. It was not just a beast, it was alive, aware, capable of thought and recognition. The girl slowly crouched further, lowering herself even more. She wanted to show humility, but also readiness. She had no idea what would come next, but she sensed that patience and courage could give her an advantage. She whispered, "I'm not your enemy. I hope you understand that." The dragon paused, its massive head inches from hers. Its eyes glimmered, reflecting the arena lights in a way that seemed almost like recognition. She could feel its presence pressing against her, heavy and powerful, yet she did not move back. Her mind focused entirely on the moment, entirely on survival, and entirely on understanding this incredible creature. A sudden idea came to her. Perhaps if she moved carefully, showed more courage, and made tiny gestures of understanding, she could continue to build this fragile bond. She lifted her hand slightly, extending it toward the dragon, and for the first time, it did not flinch. Instead, it lowered its head, almost as if offering acknowledgement. Her heart raced, but hope flared brighter. The dragon, the deadliest creature in the galaxy, was allowing her to exist, to survive, to interact. She realized that her courage, intelligence, and patience were working. She might actually make it through this alive. The alien spectators grew louder, their confusion and anger mixing into a chaotic roar. But the girl ignored them completely. She focused entirely on the dragon, on every subtle movement, every tiny shift of weight, every breath it took. She realized that in this moment, her survival depended on understanding, patience, and courage, not strength. The dragon took a slow step closer, and she felt the heat radiating from its massive body. She remained still, crouched slightly, hands open. She whispered again, softly, "I just want to survive." "Please." The dragon paused, tilting its head, and let out a low, resonant sound. She could feel it in her chest, in her legs, even in her arms. And for the first time, she felt a fragile sense of trust, not from the dragon fully, but enough to know that she had survived another test. She straightened slightly, still cautious, still alert, but feeling a new strength growing inside her. The dragon had not attacked. The deadliest creature in the galaxy had allowed her to survive. She had learned something important: courage, patience, an understanding to be more powerful than fear, more powerful than weapons, more powerful than size or strength. And in that moment, standing in the middle of the alien arena, surrounded by impossible odds, she realized that she might not only survive, but thrive. If she could continue to show courage, continue to understand the dragon, and continue to stay calm, she might be able to turn even this terrifying encounter into something extraordinary. The girl felt a strange bond growing between her and the dragon, one that she could barely understand. Its enormous eyes followed her every movement, and it seemed to recognize her courage and intelligence. She realized that fear alone could not survive in this arena. She needed something more: trust, understanding, and careful action. Slowly, she moved her hands, showing the dragon she meant no harm. She even crouched slightly, a sign of humility, signaling that she did not see it as an enemy. The dragon tilted its massive head, studying her. Its wings flexed, brushing the air with quiet power. She noticed a slight flicker in its eyes, something almost like curiosity. She realized that the creature was intelligent, more intelligent than she had ever imagined. It was not a mindless predator. It was calculating, observing, judging. Every movement it made was deliberate, and every motion of her own could change the outcome of the encounter. She took a careful step forward, tiny but meaningful. The dragon watched. It swiveled its massive head to keep its eyes on her, while keeping its body poised, as if ready to act at any moment. She could feel the weight of its presence pressing against her, heat radiating from its scales, and yet she did not flinch. Her courage felt stronger than her fear in that moment. She whispered softly, "I won't hurt you, and I hope you won't hurt me." The dragon let out a low rumble that vibrated through the arena, and she felt it deep in her chest. Sparks of heat from its body brushed against her skin, but she stayed still. For the first time, she felt that this might be more than survival. It might be a chance to form an understanding. If she could show patience and intelligence, perhaps the dragon could become more than a threat. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could she somehow guide the dragon? Could she learn its behavior and use that knowledge to survive the arena and even escape? The alien spectators had no idea that the girl was no longer just a helpless victim. She was learning, adapting, and thinking. Every small step she took, every subtle gesture, was teaching her something about this massive, dangerous creature. The dragon stepped closer, and she could feel the tremors through the ground. Its massive claws scratched the stone floor, sending sparks flying. She held her ground, her small legs trembling, but her mind was steady. She began to understand its patterns, the slight tilt of its head before it moved, the way its wings flexed before a step, the rhythm of its breathing. It was teaching her how it thought, and she was listening. She held out one hand slowly, palm facing the dragon. She didn't know if it could understand the gesture, but she hoped it might sense her intentions. The dragon paused and sniffed the air near her hand, its glowing eyes never leaving hers. She felt the heat of its breath, smelled the sharp scent of scales and smoke, and yet she did not pull back. Her courage felt like a small flame inside her chest, keeping her alive. The alien spectators shouted, banging on the railings, but their voices were a blur. She no longer cared about them. They were not part of this moment. This was about her and the dragon. She had to survive, not for their amusement, not for their entertainment, but for herself. Every nerve in her body was alert, every muscle tensed, every thought focused. The dragon let out a low, vibrating growl, but softer than before. She felt it through her chest and arms, through her legs and stomach. She realized it was acknowledging her, not in words, but in presence. She had survived the first tests of courage and patience, and now she was entering the next phase, forming an alliance, or at least a fragile understanding that her legs ached. Her arms trembled, but she took another step forward. She could see sparks of heat where the dragon's claws scraped the ground, and she could feel the slight vibration from its wings flexing. She whispered again, "I don't want to hurt you. I just want to survive." For the first time, she noticed the dragon's posture change slightly. Its wings lowered, its head dipped, and its eyes held a strange glow, something like recognition or curiosity. The creature, feared across galaxies, was allowing her presence, allowing her to exist without attack. The girl realized that she was no longer just a prey. She was a participant in something extraordinary. Her mind raced with ideas. Perhaps she could use the dragon to protect herself, to navigate the arena, or even to escape. Maybe if she continued to show courage, intelligence, and patience, she could turn this deadly encounter into an advantage. Slowly, she reached out her hand again, closer this time to the dragon's snout. Sparks of heat brushed her fingers, but she did not pull away. She whispered softly, "Please, I won't hurt you." The dragon paused, breathing heavily, its massive chest rising and falling. Then, incredibly, it lowered its head closer to her. Her heart raced. She could feel the heat and power radiating from it. She could feel the sheer force of its presence pressing against her body. And yet, she did not move back. She stayed still, showing trust, patience, and courage. The arena seemed to hold its breath. Even the alien spectators quieted, unsure of what was happening. The girl's focus was entirely on the dragon. She could feel a connection forming, a silent understanding between two beings from completely different worlds. She realized that courage, patience, and intelligence were more powerful than any weapon. The dragon circled her slowly, its massive claws sending small stones skittering across the floor. She crouched slightly, staying low and calm, moving just enough to show she was aware, intelligent, and not a threat. The creature seemed to respond to her presence, moving with care, measuring her every movement. A spark of hope grew inside her. She realized that she could survive, not because she was stronger or faster, but because she had learned to understand the dragon. Her courage, patience, and intelligence were giving her a chance that the aliens had never expected. Slowly, she reached out with her other hand, and for a moment, the dragon sniffed the air between them. She could feel the heat radiating from its massive body, the vibrations in the ground from its movement, and yet she remained calm. Every second she stayed composed, every small gesture she made, strengthened the fragile bond forming between them. The alien spectators grew restless again, shouting and banging, but she blocked them out. This was no longer about them. It was about survival, intelligence, and courage. She whispered again softly, "I won't hurt you. I just want to live." The dragon paused, massive eyes fixed on her, breathing deeply. She felt a subtle change in its energy, a slight shift that told her was not going to attack immediately. She realized that her patience and courage had earned her a small measure of trust from the deadliest creature in the galaxy. Her mind worked quickly. If she could continue to build this connection, if she could continue to understand the dragon and respond calmly to its movements, maybe she could turn this situation into something more than survival. Maybe she could guide it, protect herself, or even escape the arena. She crouched slightly, holding her hands open, and whispered again, "I trust you. Please don't hurt me." The dragon tilted its head, examining her. Slowly, it lowered its massive body closer to the ground, its wings folding slightly. The heat radiating from it was intense, yet she did not move back. She had survived the first trials, and now she was forming an understanding that could change everything. The girl's heart raced, but a spark of hope ignited within her. She had not only survived the first encounters, but she was learning, adapting, and connecting. She realized that courage, patience, and intelligence could be stronger than fear, more powerful than weapons, and more important than size or strength. And in that moment, standing in the middle of the arena, surrounded by impossible odds, she understood something incredible. Even the smallest, weakest human could survive and thrive if they had courage, understanding, and spirit. The dragon was not just a creature to fear, was a being that could recognize those qualities, a being that could become an unlikely ally. The alien spectators continued to shout, but their voices were distant now. The girl's focus was entirely on the dragon, on every movement, every sound, every subtle shift in the air. She realized that her survival depended not on strength, but on connection, courage, and understanding. And for the first time since she had entered the arena, she felt truly alive, truly capable, and truly hopeful. The arena was tense, alive with anticipation. The alien spectators shouted and waved their weapons, but the girl no longer noticed them. Her focus was entirely on the dragon, standing massive and powerful before her. She had survived hours of fear, confusion, and pain, but now she felt a strange sense of calm. Courage had carried her this far, and understanding had kept her alive. She realized she was no longer just a victim thrown into the arena. She was a participant in something extraordinary. The dragon circled her slowly, its wings flexing with controlled power. Sparks flew where its claws scraped the metal floor, and the heat radiating from its body was intense. Yet she remained still, crouched slightly, hands open, showing no fear, only courage. Every movement she made, every breath she took, was deliberate. She had learned that patience and careful observation could change the impossible into a chance for survival. For the first time, she felt a bond forming, fragile, uncertain, but real. The dragon's glowing eyes seemed to soften, and it tilted its massive head toward her. She realized that it was no longer seeing her as prey. It was studying her as something different, intelligent, aware, and courageous. Her heart raced, but her mind remained clear. This was the moment she had been preparing for, even without realizing it. She slowly extended her hand, palm up, toward the dragon's snout. Sparks of heat brushed her fingers, but she did not flinch. She whispered softly, "I don't want to hurt you, and I hope you don't want to hurt me." The dragon lowered its head further, almost touching her hand. She could feel the power in its presence, the sheer weight of its body, yet she stayed still. Courage had become more than survival. It was now connection. The alien spectators shouted louder, their frustration and anger spilling into the arena. They could not understand what was happening. They had expected a massacre, a display of power and death, but the girl had defied all expectations. She had survived the impossible, and now, it seemed, she had tamed the deadliest creature in the galaxy, not through weapons or strength, but through courage, patience, and intelligence. The dragon inhaled deeply, its massive chest rising and falling. Its eyes glimmered with something almost like recognition. The girl's heart raced, but she did not move back. She had learned to trust her instincts, to stay calm, to show patience and understanding. Slowly, she reached out her other hand, placing it lightly against the dragon's snout. Sparks of heat kissed her fingers, but she did not pull away. She felt the immense power of the creature, yet also its awareness and intelligence. A low, rumbling sound vibrated through the arena, coming from the dragon. It was not a roar, not a growl, but something deeper, something that seemed almost like communication. She could feel it in her chest, her arms, her legs, and yet she remained calm. The sound was a response, an acknowledgement of her courage and presence. She realized that she had not just survived. She had connected with a creature far beyond human understanding. The dragon circled her once more, slowly, deliberately, but this time without aggression. She crouched slightly, letting it move, showing patience and respect. The heat radiating from its body was intense, and every step it took shook the arena floor. Yet she stayed still, focused entirely on understanding its movements. Every twitch of its tail, every flex of its wings, every glance from its glowing eyes taught her something. A spark of hope ignited in her chest. She realized that survival was no longer a distant goal. It was within her grasp. She had learned the language of presence and courage, the subtle communication that transcended words. The dragon was no longer just a threat. It was a being capable of understanding her spirit, her patience, and her intelligence. She whispered softly again, "I trust you. Please let me survive." Slowly, she inched closer, bringing her hand near its massive forehead. The dragon lowered its head, and for a long, tense moment, nothing moved. The heat and power pressed against her, but she did not flinch. She had reached a point where courage and patience had created a fragile bond that might save her life. The arena felt still, as if holding its breath. The alien spectators shouted, but their voices faded into the background. The girl's focus was entirely on the dragon, on its movements, on the small signals it gave, and on her own calm response. Every small gesture mattered. Every heartbeat mattered. She had learned that survival was not about running, hiding, or fighting. It was about courage, understanding, and connection. Then, slowly, the dragon lowered its massive head until its snout rested gently against her hand. Sparks of heat brushed her skin, but she stayed calm. Her legs shook, her heart raced, but she held her position. The connection she had built through patience, courage, and understanding had reached a point that could not be ignored. She realized something incredible. She had not only survived the deadliest creature in the galaxy, but she had also taught it something about humans. That courage, presence, and intelligence mattered. That even the smallest, weakest human could stand before a creature of unimaginable power and be recognized, not as prey, but as a being worthy of acknowledgement. The alien spectators erupted in frustration and disbelief, waving their weapons and shouting, but the girl blocked it out. This was no longer about them. It was about survival, courage, and connection. She whispered softly, "Thank you for letting me survive." The dragon let out a low rumble, its massive eyes glowing, and for the first time, she felt a true sense of relief. The arena began to feel less like a place of death and more like a space of possibility. She had survived impossible odds, faced the deadliest creature in the galaxy, and emerged not just alive, but transformed. Her courage had carried her through, her intelligence had guided her, and her patience had created a bond that the aliens could not understand. For the first time, she felt the true meaning of strength. Not in muscles, not in weapons, not in speed or size, but in courage, patience, understanding, and spirit. She realized that even the smallest, weakest human could survive the impossible if they stayed calm, observed carefully, and acted with intention. The dragon lowered its wings slightly, and the heat radiating from its body lessened. It circled her one last time, slower now, deliberate, but not threatening. She crouched slightly, showing respect, patience, and calm. The bond they had formed was fragile, but real. And in that bond, she found hope, strength, and a sense of purpose. Her heart swelled with quiet triumph. She had survived the impossible, connected with a creature that should have killed her instantly, and proven that courage and understanding could defy expectation. She realized that her life had changed forever. This moment, this bond, this victory of spirit over fear would stay with her for the rest of her life. The alien spectators shouted and gestured frantically, but their voices no longer mattered. She was no longer a helpless human girl thrown into the arena. She had survived. She had connected. She had proven that courage, patience, and intelligence could face the deadliest odds and emerge victorious. The dragon let out one final low rumble, lowering its head in a gesture that felt like acknowledgement. The girl's heart raced, but she smiled faintly, realizing that she had done what no one had expected. She had survived the deadliest dragon in the galaxy, not by fleeing, not by fighting, but by showing courage, patience, and understanding. And in that moment, standing in the alien arena, surrounded by impossible odds, she knew something extraordinary. Even the smallest, weakest human could survive, thrive, and create connections that defied fear and power. Courage and understanding were more powerful than strength, more powerful than fear, and more powerful than death itself. She took a deep breath, feeling the heat from the dragon's body and the presence of its immense power. For the first time since she had been thrown into the arena, she felt truly alive, truly capable, truly powerful, not because of strength, but because of her spirit, her courage, and her unwavering determination to survive. The dragon lowered its massive snout one last time, brushing gently against her hand. She held her position, heart racing, and whispered softly, "Thank you for letting me live." The creature let out a low, vibrating sound that seemed like acknowledgement. And in that moment, she realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about courage, understanding, and the connection between two beings who had faced the impossible together. She had survived. She had learned. She had grown. And nothing would ever be the same again.